Hello there friends, it's Cassie. Welcome back for another Trinity Stamps video. Today we are going to be making some very simple place cards. We're going to be using the Thankful and Grateful stamp set. We're going to show you some partial die cutting with our die, and it's going to be easy and fun, and you're going to want to make these. It's going to be great. So I have a piece of craft cardstock that I've cut down to 4 inches by 4 inches, as you can see here. I am going to bring in a T-ruler. You'll see that that stamp is going to fit nicely across there. That's how I chose that size. I'm going to bring in a T-ruler and just mark it at 2 inches, just right on that edge. That's going to help us to stamp out our image. And it's also going to just kind of help us when it comes to the partial die cutting. So I'm going to put this into my mini MISTI, and I've got my image already in there. We're going to go ahead and stamp this up or ink this up with some VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. That is a waterproof ink, and I'm going to stamp that down. And I'm going to leave my stamp in my mini MISTI. We'll pull this out. I'm going to leave that there. You'll see why later on, because since this is craft cardstock, I have chosen to use a more opaque paint. This is the Arteza Metallic Watercolors, and I say opaque because obviously it's going to cover up those lines. If I go over those lines, you'll see that later on. I'm trying to be a little bit careful here. I don't want to just get too sloppy, and I'm using these metallic watercolors over the top of that, and I'm not using a lot of water. Because this is not watercolor paper, you don't want a bunch of water on there. It'll cause the paper to not only buckle, but you could pill it and just ruin it, and you certainly don't want that. And so because these are simple place cards, place name settings, I am not going to worry too much about shading. In fact, I don't worry about it at all. I just grab the colors that I want, and I just color each of those images using that metallic watercolor. So you can see when I went over the black line with it, it did cover it up. It's obviously still there, but it does cover it enough that you start to lose some of the image. And you'll see that as we continue coloring. I cover more lines, not necessarily intentionally. I'm not being super careful, but I'm not, like I said, just kind of slapping that color down all over everything. It doesn't bother me if we do cover those lines just a little bit. I've got a little white pumpkin. Now we're bringing in some of these greens, and this is more of an iridescent green. They're so pretty, and they're so different on white paper as compared to like the darker cardstocks. So I think that's another reason why I like metallic watercolors so much. The difference that you get on white paper as compared to any colored paper is just completely just different. If I were to have stamped this on black, I mean, that would be really cool. But since we're doing Thanksgiving place cards, I figured this would be a little bit better to use craft. I didn't just want to use white. I wanted something that would stand out a little bit more on my plates. Because you could do that. That's another thing you could do. Instead of stamping this down onto some craft cardstock, stamp it down on white cardstock and just paint with regular watercolors, and then you can skip the next step that we're going to end up doing. But as you can see, those lines are getting fairly covered, and when that happens, especially with opaque watercolors, it definitely looks like your watercolor techniques are not very good. Not using opaque watercolors are much more forgiving. We'll just say that. All right, so we're continuing. We're going to finish up with this last leaf. That's how simple this is. And then we're going to heat set that. But look at all that shine on there. It's super pretty. But yeah, covers the black lines. We're going to make sure that's nice and dry before we move on to our next step, which is to put it back into our mini MISTI. So make sure that it's down in that corner, nice and tight, and then I'll ink up my image once again with that VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink, because that is a pigment ink that will sit on top of what I've stamped or painted. So pull that away and take a look. It did a very good job of covering up that watercolor that had gone over those lines once before. All right, now we're going to bring in our die. You'll see what I'm talking about here. I'm going to tack that down with a little bit of tape, just like a Post-it tape or mint tape. Put that down at the bottom and at the top. And I, again, have those little lines marked at the 2-inch mark line. And we're going to bring in our die cutting machine. Mine is the Platinum 6 by Spellbinders. And I'm going to take my plate, and I have it down at the bottom. I'll realize it's a little too far down. You guys might not see that. I'll bring it a little bit closer up so you can see it. But what I'm trying to do is line that plate up with those 2 pencil lines. I just want to line the edge up right with those 2 pencil lines. That's it. Because whatever is covered by the plate is what is going to be die cut. And I just want that upper portion die cut. So I'll run that through a couple times. We're going to move our machine, and then I will peel away that die and the tape, and you can see where it just did some of that partial die cutting. Just like that. So it's a simple technique. It does pack a lot of punch, and it keeps your paper just to a single layer. I'll bring in my score buddy and score at those 2 inches. And then flip that over. I am using the Teflon Burnishing Tool and the Teflon Ergonomic Tool from Trinity Stamps. Those are great. And take a look at that. You could completely avoid doing the partial die cutting if you wanted to and just stamp and cut and then attach it, but I really love the look that this gives. And now I'm going to just write my name on there using a black marker, and we're all set for Thanksgiving, right? So I love how this turned out. I hope that you do too. If you did, please hit that like button. Definitely consider subscribing if you haven't already done so. And be sure to check out all that Trinity Stamps has going on over on their blog, Facebook page, and Instagram for more crafty inspiration. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you soon.